So we know this is a significant problem for GIS in general, because you can't exactly, just snapshot a smart map and expect to be able to get back into it and have exactly the same ability to zoom to arbitrary depth with all of the imagery and all of the vector data and so on that you can in a completely live system. But at the same time, I don't want to dumb it down so that it's just a PDF document. So how do I preserve that document for all time? So one of the other systems that we're working on with the state of Kansas is a system called KEEP, which is a happy acronym. It stands for Kansas Enterprise Electronic Preservation. And the idea is to basically provide a way for the state to store all of its electronic documents of records. And this is everything from title deeds all the way up to law. But we're just starting with law because it's just a nice, and has got a nice connection with the CALA system. But when I look at this, and I look at what's happening in most US states that have got IT consolidation initiatives happening, and people are trying to squash the number of data centers and try and create single private clouds and those kinds of things. Now that I've got the kind of GIS bug, I can't help but think to myself, gosh, why don't we just put a little bit of extra effort in here and make sure we can geocode these documents of record? Because if I can geocode these documents of record, I've then got the mother of all executive dashboards. Will just drop out if I'm clever. What also drops out of something like that is a guaranteed fresh and up-to-date data.gov portal. Because by definition, all of the documents of record, as they're being thrown off by your government agencies, are going into this tamper-evident persistent store, and then I can obviously filter that stuff for the information that can't be made public. But what happens then is I get all of the information that I might need to make available, either on the back of FOIA requests or on the back of Barack Obama's memorandum to do with open government, the Open Government Directive. And then if I slap a geoanalytics system in front of that, how powerful can that be for, say, fraud, waste, and abuse detection? How powerful can that be to drive out the efficiencies of ways in which we can take advantage of GIS? So, again, everywhere I look, it's like when you decide you're going to buy, a Toyota Corolla, and then you go out on the street and every second car you see is a Toyota Corolla. I'm kind of like that at the moment. Every problem I see is a GIS problem. So, just very quickly, I'm going to run out of time here, but a couple of other things that are happening. The Library of Congress is involved in a number of different aspects of this. The NDIP project, which I can never remember the acronym for, is one of those P's is preservation anyway. Is basically looking at the problem of how do we make sure that legislation, which is a vital national asset, that legislation, the primary authoritative versions thereof, is actually preserved and owned by the states themselves. The United States, in common with many other jurisdictions around the world, has got itself into a situation where the authoritative versions of the legal text aren't necessarily owned by the entities that produced it at all. If you ask an attorney where they go for authoritative legal information, the State House will not be the answer. And the answer that you get might surprise you. They go to companies like Thomson Reuters, they go to companies like LexisNexis, who have these big paywall-based computer systems that basically have, in many cases, the practical authoritative version of the legal materials. I don't think that's a healthy situation for a modern day democracy to get itself into. So the NDIP program of the Library of Congress addresses some of that. The last P there, that's not a typo, there is two P's in geomap. The last one again is preservation, but it's asking the question, gosh, as GIS becomes more and more important, by definition, GIS artifacts are becoming documents of record. As Barry mentioned, I can't remember when he first mentioned it, I heard it today as well, the duty of care. Oh, that wasn't the phrase, what was it? Standard of care. Okay, I think it's called duty of care in Irish jurisprudence, but the same idea, that we have to be able to preserve all of this. If we give someone a map and say, here you go, here's great information, and you can now make decisions on the back of that, well, we need to be able to stand over the provenance of that, and we need to be able to reproduce it in a couple of years' time. It's part of our overall governance, risk, and compliance strategy that we have to have. So this business of preserving maps is a very important one, and it's one that we are hopefully going to be working with the Library of Congress on, and with the Kansas State Historical Society, who are the people who are responsible for the KEEP system. And I'm also involved in this thing called an NIEM e-democracy domain. Has anyone come across NIEM, the National Information Exchange Model? It's a very interesting model. Obviously it came out of the Department of Homeland Security in the first instance to get the government, the various emergency response agencies to be able to better share information. What we've done is we've carved up a new domain within NIEM, specifically for electronic democracy. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking all of this GIS-related issues that we have and trying to see if we can drive out some 50 statewide standards for interoperability across state boundaries of this material using NIEM. So, I mentioned earlier on that I'm a failed writer, so one of the things I had convinced myself of when I was about 14 was that I was going to be the next James Joyce. So, in one of his impenetrable novels, Ulysses, one of his characters asks the question, what is a nation? And the answer was, it's the same people living in the same place. And one way of looking at it is that's just a nonsense answer, because it doesn't actually tell you anything, because it doesn't define what sameness means. It doesn't even define what place means. But I think we all have an intuition that nationhood is somehow intimately tied to geography. So how is it that one of the three pillars of government, we've got the executive branch, we've got the legislative branch, we've got the judicial branch. How come we've got ourselves into a situation where one of those three pillars in most of their deliberations don't use GIS? How? Which just boggles the mind. But that's where we've ended up. I love this thing from Governor O'Malley. I don't know if any of you have seen the video of Governor O'Malley where he explains some of the amazing work they've done in Maryland. And he says, you show someone a map and immediately they will say, show me my house. That is one seriously powerful, compelling thing. This morning I'm afraid I'm terrible with names, the gentleman from Google talked about the magic moments. Magic moment number one, when explaining anything with GIS, is put this in front of a legislator and show them their house, and then show them their electoral district. You've got them. It takes exactly 30 seconds to sell the value of this. 30 seconds. You also heard references earlier on to how, in these incredibly tight economic times, money was made available to the folks in Arkansas who were doing all of the great work. Well, why was it made available? Because they made themselves critical to the operation of the enterprise. They had solutions to the show me my house problem. So these tight budgetary times is not a time to cry into your beer. Quite the opposite. This is the opportunity to be able to look and say, GIS is so profoundly cool that it can save, not just nickels and dimes. We're talking millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. Just, get a bit of support from the legislative branch and you'd be amazed how quickly they can provide all of the necessary funding to drive something like this through, because they will see benefit in it for them. That's a very, very powerful thing. Tip O'Neill, an honorary Irishman. I visited Washington, D.C. Recently to talk to some of their IT people. I had the tremendous honor of actually getting onto the floor of the house. It's just absolutely amazing to stand there and think of everything that happened in that room and all of the people that were in that room. And I actually got to stand beside Tip O'Neill's seat, and that was just kind of really cute, until it was pointed out to me that there was a bullet hole in the back of it. Because apparently Tip O'Neill would have been killed. This was back in the 60s or 70s, when there was, I can't remember who it was.
Some terrorists.
Yeah, some terrorists came in and bullets were fired. And Tip O'Neill, like all good Irishmen, was in the restroom at the time. But they've left the bullet hole there. But anyway, he also said that, he famously quoted as saying that all politics is local. I absolutely believe that that's true. In Ireland, we call it parish pump politics. In Ireland, back in the days before running water was prevalent in houses, there was a parish pump, and that's where you went to get your water. So if you wanted to know what the people thought, or if you wanted to spread a piece of news or spread a rumour or something, there was only one place to go, and that was the parish pump. That is just profoundly true of politics all over the world. So again, it's just place everywhere. So I think there's the opportunities here for democracy just absolutely abound. So this is my final quote in this. I really like this. This is a guy called William Gibson, who's an amazing science fiction writer. But one of his quips is that the future is here, it just isn't evenly distributed. And it absolutely is already here. I mean, when I look at what GIS can do at the moment, and I look at my 15-year-old daughter, who scares the life out of me for all sorts of reasons. But one of the things that she really scares me with is just the extent to which, the extent to which she thinks that all of this GIS and location-based services and all the rest of it is just a complete no-brainer. Well, I mean, of course the world's going to work that way. I mean, how else would it work, Dad? You know? So, you know, the future is already in the hands of the Facebook generation, you know, the smartphone brigade, right? The folks who like, you know, my generation lost the ability to do mental arithmetic, you know, because we started with calculators and then we had computers. I can't play darts because I can't subtract numbers, you know? You know? Cy made the quip earlier on that he can't get from A to B anymore without, you know, a Garmin or a, you know, or a Google Navigator. I'm absolutely the same. The next generation is going to lose the ability to find Walmart, you know. This stuff is happening, you know. So I think that the question is not. I know Jack Dangerman likes to say that, you know, GIS, you know, can change the way the interaction between citizens and government. I respectfully disagree with Jack Dangerman. I think it absolutely will. There's no doubt that it will. The only question is, will it come in time to save democracy? And I think that is where the people in this room, I think, can really help. Can we really afford to just wait for this to happen until the 15-year-olds get to the age of 40, you know, and become elected representatives in these institutions? Or can we as a group, in particular can the expertise in this group, basically get the people who live underneath that dome to realize just the incredible power that is sitting out there, generally in the agencies, generally at local government or municipal level. As I said, the future is already here, it just isn't evenly distributed. One of the places which it has just passed by, for some reason, is that big dome. But that big dome passes the budget. Bear that in mind. These are the people who basically decide where the dollars for infrastructure goes. GIS is a critical national data infrastructure asset. It is not a computer system. It is not an IT problem. And if you make it directly relevant to the folks under the dome, as the guy from Google's, I'm afraid I forget his name, sorry, said earlier on, you know, yeah, look after the user and everything will take care of itself. You know, everything else will follow. Look after the politicians. Everything else that you guys could possibly want in GIS will follow. Okay, that's me. Thank you very much.
All right, so we have a few minutes. We could have some discussion, some questions, comments, etc. So we've got a microphone up here in the front if you'd like to engage.